Good evening and welcome to everyone joining us live on Zoom and on Facebook. My name is Natalie Tate, and my co-host this evening is the amazing Sam Onyalo. Yeah, I had to say it. Tonight, we're talking to three special guests. We have Charmaine Emerson, founder and managing director of Cultured Communications and co-founding director of the Black Opportunity Fund. We also have Janelle Edwards, outdoor real estate specialist and owner of EV2 Property Group. And finally, Ryan Knight, serial social entrepreneur and executive director of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. Thank you all for being here. Before we get started in this virtual environment, I would just like to remind anyone who's on Zoom to mute yourself during the event. And should you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. We definitely want to hear from you. It's also important that you know that we are recording this session and streaming on Facebook. So we are really excited to get started with tonight's conversation on Black economic empowerment. What we're looking to highlight are a few areas. What barriers or challenges Black communities are experiencing in attaining and sustaining economic empowerment, what future we should be aspiring to, who's doing the work, and finally, what actions can we take today to move the needle forward? For YBP, we're really interested in having this conversation because this is something that we are interested in amplifying. We want to amplify the issues, the challenges, the people who are doing the work, and also work with our membership by connecting them to opportunities to take action for themselves, but also for the community. Before we go any further, just want to express our respect to all First Nations, Inuit and Métis people, and recognize their presence as the first peoples of this land. Our event is being hosted from Ottawa, which is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. If you're joining us from somewhere else, we encourage you to do your own acknowledgement at this time. Also, it is important for us to recognize that we are coming towards the end of the UN Decade for People of African Descent, which started in 2015 and will end in 2024. This decade, which was officially recognized in 2018 by the Canadian government, is founded on three pillars: recognition, justice, and development. And the development piece is what this conversation is really focused on. For more information on the decade, we'll just pop some information for you in the chat. And also, when we follow up on this event, we'll be providing you with links so you can do your own research and get that information for yourselves. So, over to you, Sam.
All right, awesome. So, welcome everybody. Before we jump in, I just want to give a quick intro to our guests here, just to give them a quick look of who they are. So, Charmaine, let's start with you. Who is Charmaine?
Who is Charmaine? Well, sometimes I ask myself that, but today I'm absolutely positively sure who I am. Charmaine Emerson, really proud to be here this evening. So thank you so much for considering me and asking me to have a seat at this table, this virtual table this evening. I am a communications marketing strategist. I've been in this business for over 20 years. I'm a former journalist, having spent time at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation out of the Toronto office. And I got into public relations and marketing, as well as public affairs, which is the political side of the PR hat. And I've been here ever since. I have lately diversified and actually pushed myself out towards governance. So really getting a handle on diversifying boards as much as possible through DEI governance policy. And then the most important thing that sits the closest to my heart is being a co-founding director of Black Opportunity Fund. And we created Black Opportunity Fund. There's a number of us that were co-founders that came together. There's in fact 50 of us. And we got together because this conversation that we're having right now, which is how do we move forward as a community and create more economic and social empowerment? How do we do that? Well, it starts by us doing something ourselves. And that is how Black Opportunity Fund began. So we are about creating a sustainable pool of capital that we are working on to ensure that that well never runs dry. So that's me.
Awesome. All right. CBC governance is heavy hitter already. Okay, that's cool. Janelle, what about you? Who is Janelle?
Hi, good night or good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me a part of this conversation. I'm excited to be here. And before I begin, I just wanted to preface the conversation by not only acknowledging our Indigenous brothers and sisters in the land that we are currently on here in Ottawa, but also acknowledging our African ancestors who were brought here against their will into, of course, slavery and descended here. And for centuries, we have been established here. And I'm excited for this conversation tonight. I think that this is a very pivotal conversation that we're going to have. And I'm excited to hear everything that will transcend in this conversation. A little bit about me. I'm in real estate. I'm a realtor here in the city of Ottawa. I started my real estate journey in Toronto. I've been in real estate now for over 8 years, initially started as an investor. So I got my hands set in real estate investing. And I also work with some mid-scale investors as well, individuals who would purchase property, flip, refurbish properties, and that also landed me in opportunities when it comes to development. So currently, along with helping people purchase and buy, sell real estate and investing, I am also getting very acquainted with the development side of things. So that includes affordable housing initiatives here in the city of Ottawa and as well as through the GTA region. And also globally, I am currently acquiring my master's degree in global real estate development. So my intention is to take some of that and bring it to places across the nation, across the globe, I should say, particularly in developing nations, so that we can help elevate our communities. I enjoy and I thoroughly enjoy helping clients purchase, sell, and also give them the tools needed to understand how real estate can be a huge driver when it comes to real wealth generation. And working with investors has been something that I've absolutely enjoyed doing. So that's just a little bit about me.
Okay, awesome. Real estate development. Okay, big things for sure. We're definitely gonna want to dive into that. And then Ryan, not to leave you last, but I had to let the ladies go first.
Hey, never have to apologize for me going after two powerhouses. And Janelle, it's so great that you mentioned Africa, because I'm actually in the process of writing a book called Black Man, It's Time to Prosper by Finding Africa. So stay tuned for that, coming to a Kohl's near you or whoever sells books now. But a little bit about myself. One of the co-founders of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. And we really started 5 years ago, which I can't believe it's our 5-year anniversary in December. So the invitations to our anniversary are going to be sent out. So stay tuned for that. And really, it was because we saw a gap. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I was running a company called Detailing Nights, and we were going to franchise and expand. And there were no Black-focused business organizations that I could go to that had the mandate to scale up companies. So we brought 6 other entrepreneurs together, said, could we create this entity that would sit down with an entrepreneur, figure out what stage their business is in, and then help them create a strategy to exponentially grow their companies. So thus ACBN was born. Over the last 5 years, we've been able to engage with over 5,000 Black entrepreneurs. We have now been able to partner with 40 other Black business-focused organizations. So our reach is extending over 20,000 and growing. And now we started with info sessions and networking events, but now we've shifted to more capacity building. So we started our own microloan fund in partnership with Alterna Savings. We're working on a marketing division to help people with their sales, and also an investment readiness track to help them get that first injection of capital. We typically miss the friends and family round, so we're hoping to get entrepreneurs prepared to get that first 50 to 250,000. And so happy to see Charmaine on, because I'm looking forward to the partnerships that Black Opportunity Fund ACBN is working on. But yeah, happy to be part of the conversation.
Awesome. So actually, let's continue with you, Ryan. So a lot of the time when we think about Black economic empowerment, we think of Black Wall Street, right, as a great example, at least in the Americas, right? So what do you think like is stopping us? So what's the barrier for like where's the next Black Wall Street and why? You know, what are the barriers to that like right now?
Oh boy, I would say we have attempted, I would say, Black Wall Streets in Canada. If you, I guess, dig into the history of Africville, and there's another one, yeah, the name escaping me, but a lot of times those opportunities that we've built for ourselves and true empowerment are actually taken away. And so because it was taken away in the past, I feel like it makes us gun shy to try again. And really right now, our elders have paved the way for us to have the freedom to build and create a really strong foundation. So I feel like now is the time to really be purposeful about economic development and empowerment. But if you only look at the past, you'll see, hey, Tulsa and Black Wall Street was literally bombed and destroyed. So if that sticks in our mind, we won't try again. But if we can take that learning and understand now our elders have built a Canada that is safe to build, and that kind of thing wouldn't happen again. Maybe that's my naivete speaking, where I feel we won't get bombed if we build another Africville, or it won't just be taken from under us. But I feel now's the time.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to what Ryan said. I think part of it is, I don't want to just think about Black Wall Street. I really don't. Because Black Wall Street seems that we can't obtain that. Like, we can't reach that. The average Black person cannot reach the Black Wall Street. It already creates a barrier just by those two words, wall and street, right? So I just say to myself, we need to change that narrative. It's not about reaching or creating Black Wall Street. It's about creating economic empowerment, even at the most basic level, right? Whether we're looking at that as economic empowerment that allows us to have our own homes, to own our own homes, ownership. Ownership is a big word in terms of getting towards Black economic empowerment. And so I think we need to forget about aspiring to Wall Street. Let's just aspire within our own walls, if you will, to just do what we can, create what we can for ourselves economically. If we look at it this way, then we can grow it incrementally, up, up, and up. Let's not just think about the super top. Let's just think about the bare minimum. What do we need to do? And for me, ownership and savings to get to ownership. And that's a whole other conversation that we also need to talk about within our community, which is the whole idea of savings and how we go about doing that.
Mm-hmm. And I like what you're saying about, there's this like aspirational piece of Black Wall Street, but there's somewhere around here that we really need to start. But whether it's, the home ownership or the Black Wall Street, like, what are you seeing? And I'll throw this to Janelle, as the issues. What are the barriers? What's keeping us from getting either?
You know what? I think we are at a very pivotal time in history now. We are coming off the cusp of what transpired in 2020 with, of course, the death of George Floyd, with the movement, the integral movement of more conversations about Black and more Black spaces. And that conversation needs to continue. It is imperative that we do have people on the grounds and in higher places dismantling systemic racism, offering more opportunities, and not only just opportunities, but making sure that we are heard and that we are at the table when it comes to land use, when it comes to ownership, because it is known, and we can go into deep discussion about all of the systemic issues that continue to plague us. But within our community, what I would say is that we need to also get to a point where we're no longer seen as the charitable community, that we're no longer seen as we can only thrive based on handouts. that we can look inside of our community and access the incredible skills and talents that we have and start putting some pieces together and see how we in fact can utilize everything that we have as a community and grow forward. Even when we look at our history, from coming and continuation from even our parents' generation who came and settled here in Canada to give many of us a different life, our history is based on falling and getting back up and being way better in many circumstances. So that being said, how can we now as a community take that same theory and apply it? And that means making financial conversations an everyday topic in our households, making, the basics about financial literacy now as common as we talk about social media. We should be having these conversations with our loved ones, with our families. And it also begins by debunking a lot of the myths that we have in our community, as well as the psychological issues that unfortunately stem from our history when it comes to money, money management, financial gain, and as well as wealth. If we were to start there and start realizing that we belong and we deserve and we have every single right to be wealthy and have conversations, and that be a normal conversation within our household, I believe that starts there. From that, we can then now take a look at building and creating more wealth, whether it be through joint ownership of properties, of businesses, and creating spaces that are meant for us.
Agree. I absolutely agree with everything that you just said, Janelle. But what really sticks out for me as the biggest barrier when we're looking at why don't we have more social empowerment as a community of Black people? Why don't we have more economic empowerment, right, within our community? And you know what? I'll tell you why. Because we are not supporting each other. Because when Janelle mentions whatever myths we have, that we might believe about what we've heard within our community or without, our ability to run businesses and be, entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, doesn't matter. If we want to create change, we must be the change that we want to create. It starts with us. So where are you buying your coffee? Where are you buying your clothes? Who owns it? Is it Black led? Is it Black serving? Right? What are you studying in school? Where are the barriers that we have? Healthcare. Okay, great. We've got a lot of Black healthcare workers. Thank goodness we see ourselves there. We now know that within medical school, there's a rise in terms of the Black doctors that we're seeing. It's fantastic to see that, right? Amazing. We're now seeing way more Black professionals in the real estate, right? So we need to fill the gaps where we are not. But more than anything else, we need to make a concerted effort to support each other, right? You're going to buy your shoes, you're going to buy, I don't know, whatever you're going to save for at a designer level. Where are the Black designers, right? Where's the Black restaurants where you live, where you work? Where can you order that from? We need to support our own, right? Where's the entrepreneur who owns the auto mechanic shop? I don't care if it's 20 minutes away, if it's 30 minutes away. If we can support our own, that is the effort that we need to be doing. Again, it starts with us. We need to be much more collected and together than being divisive, right? If we stick together and look at a number of different ways where we can support each other, like other successful ethnic communities do, the Italians, right? The Greek community, the Chinese community, they are all working to support each other. They do that very well. We need to do a better job. And when we think about that, there have been organizations that have pre-existed, Black Opportunity Fund, right? that's pre-existed the Afro-Caribbean business. They have been here in the trenches forever. What are we doing to support their efforts? What are we doing? Are we doing anything? Are we volunteering? Like, what are we doing? What we're doing is complaining a great deal. We need to stop complaining and start doing more.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up because it really illustrates something within the Black community that happens, like the conversation around unity, right? Like I mean, I've been, since I was a kid, I've been hearing about, you know, we need to be united. I think even in Kwanzaa, there's a whole like unity like theme that is sort of presented there, but you know, that's a narrative that has been talked about for a long time, right? So it's like, what does that actually look like practically, right? Like I know you mentioned like finding the Black, you know, businesses, buying from like Black coffee shop owners, but at the same time, again, this is something that we've heard for a long time. So like, what do you think? One, even though we all know, like we all sort of know that, you know, it's unity that we need to strive to, but then at the same time, we've been hearing these stories for a long time. So one, what do you think is the thing that's stopping us from sort of, you know, getting together in that unity? And what does that actually look like practically, you know, beyond just like, you know, maybe going to the coffee shop? Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I was curious to hear Charmaine's response to the question. I'll answer after.
Sure. So what are we not doing? We're not getting involved. Sam, we are not involved enough as a community. That's the problem. It's a significant problem. And until we actually get involved and do something, figure out where's your area of interest? Where does it lie? Is it healthcare? Is it education? Is it entrepreneurship? Find it. Is it criminal justice? Where on the social justice wheel does your interest lie? We need to band together because we don't do that enough. We just don't. Right?
What does getting involved look like practically?
How about starting with volunteer? How about finding an organization that is going to benefit where you live, your community, your family, your extended family? How about trying that first? Right? Everyone says they don't have the time. Well, it's really easy to say you don't have the time, isn't it? But yet complain at the same time.
Right. And one thing, Sam, you doubled down on what can be done. What can we do now to actually create that cohesion? And that to me is the one pushback I have with our elders, is that they did a great job to pave the way, but they actually didn't create a communications network amongst the ecosystem. So the ACBN, we're part of this now Black entrepreneurship ecosystem, and you can see how disjointed it is, where each organization gets money, they retreat to their camps, they work on their own programs, but we're not interconnected to make sure that we actually leverage that money. So $100 million has gone into the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem, yet we don't have a framework to communicate with each other. That to me is the fundamental flaw. And when you look at the different priorities in the Black community, whether it's education, health, justice, social, family affairs, and of course, economics, each of those themes would have their own priorities, and then we should have a strategy to work towards that priority. For example, in economics, we should be working towards our own financial institution. Hey, there's one in development. Are we all as an ecosystem supporting the Pan-African Credit Union? Is there even conversations about starting our own hospital? Is there conversations about starting our own school and or district, like actual school board in the Black community? Is there conversation about having our own first response justice division? Children's Aid Society, is there a conversation about creating our own first response when children need support that's built in our community? These are all elements that if we create the right communication ecosystem to understand what everybody is doing and how to plug in and be the best puzzle piece you can be that plugs into the bigger system, we get a lot further. But right now, we're very disconnected. And I feel like we're slowly merging and melding together, but it has to be purposeful. I talk a lot about the ecosystem having the study group that meets on a regular basis to strategize.
Mhm.
We as Black people, we're always in the work. We get it done. We see an issue, we'll start a program and we get it done to fill that gap. But we a lot of times don't take time to step back and make a strategy. What Charmaine was saying is like, yes, we start with ourselves, with our family, with our own cohesive unit and make that the best it can be. But that should be connected to a bigger strategy. And if you ask who is creating the strategy for the Black community, I couldn't say one definitive entity that we're, and I wouldn't even say an entity, because when we put it onto one organization, we're actually losing the strength. It's the collective thought. No matter what anybody is doing, it all needs to combine into this collective thought that understands what's going on. Maybe call it a think tank.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I would say just my response to that is, and here's a rhetorical question. Why does the Black community need some or one cohesive communication outlet that spreads the word about what everyone else is doing? Does that exist in the Italian community? No. Does that exist in the Greek community? No. Does that exist in the Chinese community? No. It doesn't even exist in the white community. What exists are organizations that have loud voices, and those organizations themselves are cohesive, right? Are filled with capable people on the inside, and that are volunteers contributing as well. So what's happened is you've got these organizations that are solid within those communities. So I'm going to say the Italian Canadian Association. There's an example, okay? Or you might say, within the Black community, there's the Afro-Caribbean Business, okay, network. That could be one. You could also say Black Opportunity Fund is another. You could say Black North Initiative is another. We need to make sure that the organizations that exist are in fact communicating what it is that they're doing. That's what we need. The onus is not on one organization. That is unfair. It needs to be a number of organizations that are doing what they're doing really well and communicate that, push that out into the community. And then there might be some other organizations that are doing something that might have access to more money, and then think about, okay, how do we partner with some of those other organizations that we know also have the loud voices, right? Like the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, right? As an example, okay? Or it might be, Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, or, you know what I'm saying? It's just making sure that when we talk about communications, that those organizations that have formed a solid organization are doing their job to push it out, their message, so you know about it. Prime example, BBPA. We all know the BBPA. The BBPA is a solid organization that has done a phenomenal job when it comes to Black entrepreneurship. Like, they're the originals in my books, okay? They've done it. They've worked really, really hard to make sure that many of us know who they are. They've been around forever, and they're continuing to grow. And frankly, I think the new leadership is really, really strong. And they are doing their job to communicate what what their mandate is. We just need to make sure that we are doing the exact same thing.
I think, Ryan, you were about to jump in there with the maybe not opposing viewpoint, but a different viewpoint on
right.
that.
I wanted to, because I tried to pull it back as I was saying, it's yes, not one organization. I'm talking collective thought. So no matter what anybody is doing, it comes into collective thought. So, hey, they have to get it out as best they can. But this is where, and I jumped in when I said those communities do have think tanks. And when you talk about who creates the strategy, it isn't that initial one organization. It's a collective of everybody that has a voice coming to make a strategy. And then that strategy is what they implement.
Right.
Everybody that we don't, and this is where we have to look at ourselves as we don't have a Pentagon right now. We're all battleships in the ocean fighting random wars, and we all feel like we're fighting the best war, but there's no way to quantify that, because when you go up against, let's say, the Jewish community, they have a Pentagon. They know which branches and where they're fighting wars, and if issues happen, they know how to attack that issue. That's what the Black community is needing. So I 100% agree. It doesn't fall on just one organization, but how we communicate, whatever that's called, doesn't exist yet.
If we bring it back, I think some of that dysfunction is related to mental health. So that is something too, that before we start creating that Pentagon, that we also need to really, as a community, tackle the mental health issues that we have within our communities. Because it's amazing how many individuals and conversations that I have when it comes to wealth, that we believe that we're not allowed to be in these spaces or even have these types of conversations. Not to mention, if we do have conversations, the systemic, plan has made it that in those conversations, we're veering off away from our Blackness for some odd reason. And so that too has been an underlying current within our community that has also been a preventative measure from us taking the next steps as to creating collective agreement and to becoming a part of a holistic network of individuals, because ultimately we almost want to not prevent movement from happening when we do see movement happening. And I believe it's because we have that underlying current of centuries of conversations being told that we do not deserve to be in these spaces, that if we attempt or if we strategize or move forward with creating these incredible organizations of belonging, we are now seen as non-Black, or we are seen as white, which is what all of these other communities that Charmaine has talked about, that is something that they do not have within their community. They're not discussing whether or not they are not Italian enough, or not Jewish enough, or not Asian enough to create networks, or sending their children to certain schools, or being a part of certain organizations, or starting businesses, if now all of a sudden their community is not going to see them as enough. So I think that too is a conversation. So we need to also rise together as a community. And there's some fantastic advocacy right now when it comes to mental health. There's a lot of patrons who are on the streets. I think we need to dig deeper with that, have more communication, more opportunity for free therapy. I think we need to open up the doors, have conversations with our with our politicians on the ground to ensure that Black people, we are deserving of free healthcare, especially when it comes to mental health. And Ryan, you also mentioned about the gap between the generations, how our ancestors who came here have paved this incredible way, of which many of them also purchased property. A lot of our parents' generation, grandparents' generation, they were incredibly smart, came here to Canada with virtually nothing, and were able to make something work. And many of them purchased property. And that gap has created an unfortunate loophole where a lot of that property is now being drained away from our community. It is being sold to people outside of the Black community. And it's because of, I would say again, a lot of current with regards to mental health and of course financial literacy. And we need to figure out how to bridge that gap to make sure that properties that our parents, with their hard work, determination, blood, sweat, and tears acquired here in Canada remains in the Black community. So I would say we need to also as a community take mental health to a completely different level and not be afraid to have those conversations.
Yeah, I like what you said about the property being drained away from our community. I want to dive into that before we get into that, just about mental health, right? So what you were saying reminded me of, as soon as you maybe get some, if you're the first one to get education, you start talking a little different, then all of a sudden, you're not Black enough, that sort of thing, right? So what do you think is the thing that allows us to sort of maintain, like, oh no, you're still Black, even if you may, talk a certain way or this and that? Like, is it going to therapy? Is it like something along those lines or something else? What do you think?
Canada they call us the salad, right? Unlike the United States, where it's more so the melting pot, Canada is a flourishing community where we get to celebrate our Blackness in all different forms, wherever you come from. Of course, we all originate from Africa. However, we have cultural heritages from across the world. So number one, we need to honor that. We need to say, look, our Black is incredibly diverse. Our spectrum of Black is absolutely beautiful and needs to be celebrated. So it begins there, because the conversations of, you are a part of one community versus another community. At the end of the day, when we walk into certain rooms, we are seen as Black, but within our community, we need to honor the diversity that is amongst us. So that's where I would say we need to begin.
Okay. So in terms of like mental health, you're saying like we should just like acknowledge each other's individual cultures, but then like understand that we're also part of the same culture. Is that kind of where you're going? Absolutely.
We are all individuals with we have a plethora of history and a plethora of knowledge, and we have a lot of circumstances behind us. We are not a one-size-fits-all community. And so everyone's experience is going to be completely different. Somebody who grew up in, a remote area in the Caribbean is going to have a completely different outlook on life than perhaps somebody who grew up in riches in Africa. So I think that beauty lends to the character of Black people, and honoring that, number one, can start the conversations. And then when it comes to actually how we move forward as a community, not being afraid to come to the table and face each other and our differences. I think our difference is what makes us unique.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm gonna keep bringing it back to the action items, to because we want to talk about tangible, things that we can do like today, right now, right? So similar to the go find that Black coffee shop over there. So what does that look like practically, like on the ground, first step sort of thing?
I think we need to get involved.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I was just going to say, I'm noticing some really good comments in the chat, and I just wanted to raise those to the forefront. We have Chris Scipio talking about mental health issues that are always affecting us in so many ways, intergenerational traumas, being denied opportunities. It undermines our mental health, and not having the right supports to help with our mental health makes it challenging for us to take advantage or even access opportunities. And I think that's such an amazing point. Joan Thompson is also talking about, our diversity is a good thing. Like what Janelle was saying, definitely a positive aspect, but it can sometimes divide us. And I know growing up, man, if I'm going to be honest here, like the things that I've heard about, supporting, Black people, or, buying from that Black store, or sometimes it's not always positive messages that you're getting. So we really need to reflect on that and bring things like that to the forefront as well, so we can develop that trust that you guys are talking about, so that we are supporting each other. And these are some of the things I think that you guys are going to talk about in terms of the action items.
Mhm.
But in terms of the practical action items, I also want you guys to reflect on what is that end state that we're looking to achieve, and the practical action items that are really going to get us there.
I would like to say, let's take a tidbit from some of the communities that were mentioned on today. And if we look at a few of them, they were not afraid to take on certain skilled work jobs. If we're talking about from a practicality standpoint, I think that if we start having conversations with our children from now, to not be afraid of looking into skilled work. So the jobs that perhaps might look obsolete down the future, simply because from a real estate perspective, one of the biggest issues right now that we're facing is the lack of construction work
Construction.
and the lack of skilled trade workers, from engineers to electricians to plumbers to all of them. And when you look at some other communities, that's how they got their foot through the door. They weren't afraid to take on those jobs and work tirelessly. And then now they were able to build up a network and ultimately own, plazas and neighborhoods. So let's start by having conversations with our kids about taking on a skilled trade, so that in the future, when we are of a certain age group, that our children can now be the individuals that we go to in terms of having those jobs. I think that that is a great starting point, in terms of filling that gap.
And they should really understand the full vertical of it as well. So I talked about the report that we did, the Black Labor Market Assessment, totally backs what you're saying. Construction, there is a gap, and there's going to be such a bigger gap. But when you mentioned about jobs that might be obsolete, the federal government just committed $187 billion to infrastructure. We're seeing CMHC, $70 billion portfolio to build affordable housing. It's either Ellis Don or Akon is slated to build 1.2 million units over, I believe it's the next 10 years. Those jobs are not going away. But if we only pigeonhole ourselves to, I would say, the frontline skilled labor, when we should be owning some of these development, we should be owning some of these electrician and welding and all the trades. We have to get into ownership of those businesses. Now talk to our parents of these youth and talk to the youth directly and say, listen, the trends are going here. If you get in on the ground floor now, and I would also add in technology to that. A lot of growth is happening with technology. Of course, they call it the fourth industrial revolution. If we strategize from now to let them know where the trends are going, they will be aspiring to work for Black firms that are in these growing trends, instead of when I go into MBA classes now, they're like, oh yeah, I want to go work for KPMG or McKinsey. Like, where's our Black firms and our Black construction companies that our youth can aspire to work for?
Right. So a couple of things on that. So I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, it would be great if we had a lot more ownership, right? Whether it's ownership at the skill level or even at in professions, whether that's owning your own consultancy firm, right? There's the McKinsey firm, there's the Deloitte's, right? There's the EYs and those accounting firms as an example. But what those firms are doing, and this is what's very interesting, and I'm happy to see, is there movement. There's movement within many of those firms, right? To create these Black networks, right? Where they are working and they're making a concerted effort to increase the population that they have from our community within their firms. So McKinsey has the McKinsey Black Network, MBN, and it's new. It's relatively new. And it's McKinsey making an effort to increase the number of Black consultants within their firm at a global level. MBN, McKinsey Black Network. So that is, one of the big powerhouses in terms of consultancy firms trying to make a difference. That's that. The other side of that is the entrepreneur, right? Whether you're the entrepreneur who is in skilled labor and you have, you run a plumbing company and it might be just you and 3 others that work with you. That's still a small business that you have and you're growing. What I think we need, or where we need to start for me, is savings. Understanding the significance of saving, not spending. Right? We need to realize that there is no ownership. There is no economic empowerment. There is no empowerment, self-empowerment, if we can't save 10 cents, right? We need to be able to say, we're going to put X amount of money away, and it is going to go towards creating legacy for the next generation if you have a next generation, if you are planning to build a next generation. And it can be something as easy as taking out a life insurance policy. Life insurance is not to be scoffed at. It's $1 million policy. Anything can happen to any of us anytime. We don't have to be old to leave this planet. It can happen anytime. And if you have a life insurance policy of $1 million, when you leave, there's $1 million that you have left to benefit someone else, whoever it is that you name. But that's massive. That's very significant. People think, oh, I don't want to pay that $40 a month or that, $85 a month. How many patties are you buying? How many coffees are you buying? How many stops at Tim Hortons are you making in the month? What? That's not money. That's not savings. You're throwing that away. We need to change how we think within our community about this.
Yeah, Charmaine, I really like that. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna piggyback that because even the thought of life insurance has this stigma where parents will say to us, oh, I don't want to talk about my kid dying. Why are you talking about putting life insurance on them? But life insurance has many benefits that we're not in that piece of financial literacy in the community. So something that we actually started experimenting with is talking to a new parent that's the mother's pregnant and starting to build a success plan around that child. And insurance is part of that. What the employment trends are part of that. How to get this child mentorship is part of that. So when we talk early about how to use life insurance and other tools, again, saving for our home, we should be talking to these 1-2-year-olds and their parents about, okay, what are we doing to save up for when they're leaving? They have a home that they have a down payment for. That success plan, we really haven't figured out how to start as young as possible and put the right tools around our children.
Yeah.
Hey, I really truly believe this is an infinity game. A lot of times I'll bring up stuff like that and be like, oh, but there's no way that can be done. It's like, yo, you're thinking about our generation.
Right.
We need to be thinking about 150 years from now, 300 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
What could we have started today that Canada's only around 150 years old? We could have started the foundation of something that'll be as amazing as Canada and even better. So
right.
You have
no,
to think.
absolutely. Again, it's the whole financial literacy thing. So it's understanding savings, it's understanding financial literacy. That is our Achilles heel, right? Those two pieces right there. Okay, they just contribute together as one. Massive Achilles heel for us right there. Okay, so if we were to even go back on the financial responsibility and learning more and understanding more about it, let's say you do get enough money and you scratch together and you put a down payment on, let's say it's your condo, let's say it's a house. Okay, guess what? You can actually leverage that to buy something else that you will own. People think, no, what do you mean? How can I do that? I can't go borrow more money. Listen, if you can make your monthly payments, then you can borrow more money. You can leverage it to buy something else. That's how wealth works. That's how they all get ahead of us. Because we don't know that. There's not enough of that learning because we're all afraid and we're like, oh, you got to pay off your mortgage. You got to pay it off, pay it off, pay it off. Okay, great. And then you don't do anything. You don't go any trips. You don't go here. You don't do anything with your kids, and you wonder why. Because then you're what we call house poor, right? Well, what if you leverage some of that you own, okay, which means you're going to be borrowing money, but as long as you can make your payments, you're good. And what you borrow to invest in, someone else comes in to what you purchased and they pay for it. So my point is we need a lot more understanding within our community about how we can begin to build our own. And when I say wealth is a big word. I don't mean that. I just mean a better financial life for ourselves.
I would also like to add to that too, along with, the life insurance. They say that, of course, we are 400 years behind in terms of financial literacy. And imagine that if everybody had a life insurance policy, that would absolutely help tremendously closing the gap. The other one too is having a will, ensuring that the assets that you do own, that there is conversation and clarity as to who is getting what. Because ultimately, if that is not solidified, then guess who gets it? It's the government who gets all of your assets. So having a will, no matter what age you are, that too is also crucial. And
Yeah.
Charmaine, thank you so much for bringing up the point of leverage. And I also wanted to say something. What I have seen far too often, being in real estate, particularly with the Black community, is our homes and taking care and pride of ownership. Because what I am seeing, or what I have seen, is again, our parents who came and purchased property, and you know, allowing them to ultimately disintegrate, not putting money back into the home, not refurbishing them, allowing them to remain in a state from when they had first purchased it, and sitting on it for years, paying off their mortgage. And when time does come to possibly sell, which I always advise to not sell, but I've seen circumstances of when they put that property in the market, that home is now completely undervalued. It is now seen as the ugly house on the market or on the street that basically investors want to get. And investors are keen on getting property not only below market value, but completely undervalued. So
Yeah.
that is conversation we also have to have, that if you own an asset, be sure to take care of it, make the upgrades. If you need conversation about how to get the loans, because there are loans out there that you can obtain to help you with renovating your house. If you need or details or information and contractors, there's a lot of Black contractors within our web. I can think of a plethora, even in the GTA and Ottawa region, who have a lot of experience to help with keeping up the homes. I think that that too can lend tremendously to keeping money, more money in our pockets, and then also allowing for our parents to live in a home with pride. I think that that too is key. Far too often do I see homes that our parents have purchased 30, 40 years ago, and it remains in that state, and ultimately it's leaving our community in disarray.
Yeah, so these are like amazing points. I feel like we could like have another hour of discussion. I've learned so much, but we only have 5 minutes left. So I do want to sort of, we like to wrap it up with something called a 3 and 3, where we sort of talk about 3 main takeaways and 3 actions that we can all take like right now. And it's so hard to boil it down to 3 because there's been just so much information, but you know, we'll do our best. So I think for at least for the 3 takeaways, one is, I mean, the huge point at the end about savings and financial literacy, life, like, you know, life insurance, that whole thing. It's to be honest, I never even thought about life insurance as like a way to have a savings plan until so you said that. So that's awesome. Another huge takeaway was that comment around like communication network, and we're all battleships fighting, you know, our own little wars, but we don't have that Pentagon. And it really speaks to, like, you know, like I said, unity has always been something that we've been hearing since from, you know, time immemorial, and that really sort of, you know, coalesced what it is that why we really don't, because we all want unity, but there's really that disconnect, and I think that's really powerful. And the third one is that mental health aspect, right? Like believing that we are worthy to be in these spaces and have those businesses, and that's really powerful because, you know, without the mental, right? It all starts with the mental. Without the mental, you can't, you know, act. And then to jump into actions. So again, we want to make this real, you know, grounded, right? We don't just want to talk about policy. We want to talk about like action. So Nyla and I, we're going to challenge everyone here to, you know, to do one of these things. Hopefully 3 of these things. First thing is research and start a savings plan. I know, like, right after this, I'm gonna start Googling about a life insurance policy. because literally that just blew my mind. I never even thought of that before. Second thing is we don't participate. So participate, maybe volunteer for something or check out like, a community in your organization that you can maybe go to a meeting, right? It doesn't even have to be a huge commitment. Just go to a meeting, maybe sit in, it's like kind of like you're sitting in this one, right? Find something where you can just like participate. And third, have a conversation if you have a child or maybe if you know a young person, have a conversation with them about whether it be financial literacy, or even trades. I like the conversation we had about at the end there with trades and starting at that ground level, right? There was a point about, if we talk about, Black Wall Street, if we talk about the big sort of aspirational things that, took years for other communities to build, for us, it's really like, okay, we need to start at the ground level and work our way up towards that. And so one of the ways we can do that is, through things like trades and savings. So have a conversation with your child or, maybe a young person that about, skill trades and that sort of thing. And so those are the three and three. And then I'm going to pass it to Natalie.
Thank you, Sam, for that. I love that 3-on-3, especially that piece about volunteering. Hey, YBP, we take volunteers, man. We could use some help over here too. So I really appreciate that. Charmaine, Janelle, Ryan, thank you so much for that conversation. We learned a lot. And I really hope that the people on this call and the people watching live, that you will take some of these pieces and put it to work in your own lives. And so on that note, we just want to say thank you again. We'll see you the next time around at our next event. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.